Good afternoon, everybody. And I want to, before we get started, I want to recognize we have some very special people in our audience today. We have with us, looks like 2 county commissioners. Ms. Ruth Ann Callahan is here, and Mr. Bill McKinley. Thanks for being here. We also have a planning commissioner out there. Judy Wheeler is here in the audience. And the distinguished president of the Chamber of Commerce is also here in the audience. So thanks for being here. We want to, well, first let me say today's work session is mainly focused on receiving 2 major reports of interest to the council. The first being a report from the Sora Representatives, Poole and Dane Bauer, regarding the work that they undertook on our behalf over the last 5 or so weeks. Secondly is a presentation of the Ripken Design Report, the alternative site analysis of baseball and for the baseball stadium. So we do want to go ahead and get started with that. Without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Mr. Bruce Poole, Esquire, and Mr. Dane Bauer to the table. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you would like to, is Melissa going to join you too? Melissa. I know she's an important member of your team.
She's the key member.
Why?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking time to hear from us. We wanted to report back to you as to what we did and following up on the agreement that was reached March the 8th with the city. And specifically at that time, as you recall, you asked that we go out and survey different opportunities, meet with different interest groups, and identify ultimately opportunities and support for downtown revitalization in Hagerstown. So today we're here to report back to tell you that we have done what you asked, to tell you that we have met with a great variety of interests. We've heard a tremendous amount of feedback, and we've been able to gauge a lot of support. We do have a number of letters and supporting documentation from different interest groups indicating the thoughts of different groups as to support and ways to turn around, particularly downtown Hagerstown. We also were very involved in the Maryland General Assembly legislative session to try to have an impact that would be positive relative to funding, because that's going to be really crucial to anything that the city chooses to do. And although Delegate John Donahue is not here now, he is on his way. He will be here hopefully before we're finished speaking. But it was a very successful session, not only by the actions of Delegate Donahue, but also the help of many others in the delegation and the legislature, and particularly the administration. And we have a lot of good news on that to report. I'm going to hand off to Dane and Melissa, and they can tell you about what we did and what the upbeat of it all amounted to, and then we can open for questions after that. Dane?
First of all, just so you know, Melissa did the report. You can imagine all the input and feedback and documents and data that we got over a 5-week period from all the meetings. We had dozens of meetings with all kinds of organization, community leaders, business leaders, state officials, county officials, and it was very difficult in a couple of days after the sine die to get all this into a report, and Melissa's the author of the report. So any of the questions that you have, you can direct them to any one of us. But generally, as an overview, I would say that the predominant feedback was there has to be a process. People were not too trusting for one reason or the other that things are just going to happen because we all want them to happen. Maryland Theater in particular, and Joe Ross at Meritus Health, and the Board of Ed with some ideas they have with the Barbara Ingram School. They all believe that their individual projects and funding schemes and ability to implement depends on the ability of everybody else to implement and tie it all together. The catalyst projects, what's going to stimulate the next project, what's going to bring the next business downtown. So The master planning was a theme that everybody supported. We had met, as you read in the report, I'm sure that we met with the Washington County Economic Development Commission and the Washington County Commissioners with a bunch of business leaders and gave them an overview of all the potential ideas and the processes that you could use in order to get from point A to point B. And everybody, to a person, even all the Annapolis people said, you need a consensus building process where people can vet their ideas through a plan that goes public, where there's opportunities and venues for them to participate in workshops and sessions and charrettes, and where we can do depositories and different dedicated websites and libraries, and people can have a lot of input. Then we went and met with the people who felt they had projects. The Board of Ed first, and basically they had lots of support for the process and for our team and wanting to do something, but they felt they were too vested in the site that they had already invested some energy and money into, and that they wanted to focus their future efforts on Barbara Ingram School, a joint project with the Maryland Theater and a local restaurateur to create some sort of a all under one roof art center that would probably encompass 3 or 4 properties on Potomac. They said they have ideas, but they're not sure how to get from point A to B, and they felt that our team and working with the city could be the way that they could get where they need to be. They were very energetic about the idea of a hotel downtown, because they said many of their future plans depend on people spending a weekend in downtown, and just their theater alone and even the nice restaurants doesn't do it. It needs to be coupled with some other things and other avenues for events, and the sports center would be one, whether it was an aquatic center or something else. Then we met with Joe Ross at length about ideas and the use of his old hospital site, the things that he thinks he would like to do downtown as far as like clinics or wellness centers. And at the time, I think the mayor gave us an advance copy of the Ripken report, and we talked to Joe about it, and I can tell you have Meritus Health's full support should that be the site that the city chooses to want to do something with the stadium. We've already talked about some potential staging of parking and how that might be terraced into the hill and how that might work, and coupling that with some other ideas Joe has for development of Meritus Health facilities downtown. At any rate, we tried to put all this together into a process, and we went back to everybody and said, if we could create a team with the city and energize this through a process and a plan, would you actively participate? And we said, if you agree with that, send us letters. So we got most all of them send us a letter. We met with some of the other organizations that did not send letters, but I believe several of them reached out to the mayor and talked to them about their underlying support, even if we didn't get a letter from everybody. We met with people from Greater Hagerstown Committee, Chief, I mean, just about anybody that you had identified for us as people that would be important, whether it be the organization or board members or affiliates, business people who were associated, businesses that were associated with some of these people. And I think we have a certain momentum that hopefully we were able to reflect in the report. People want a jumping off point, and they want a place and a system and a process where they can collaborate to get something done, because they're all worried about doing their own individual thing and how it may not work, whether it's from an infrastructure standpoint, a traffic issue, parking, whether what it is that they're doing is going to be good for their neighbors and for the project down the street, because if it's not, you won't get the growth built onto the first phase of whatever we do. We've reached out to some businesses that do aquatic centers, some ones, if we gave you the name, that you would recognize that are right here. They've indicated to us that if we get teamed up with the city and we create this process, that they would actively participate with us in looking at an aquatic center downtown. It's really the synergies between all of them. If you talk about a stadium on one part of the town, an aquatic center on the other, you talk about everything that the Maryland Theater can be with the Barbara Ingram School, you talk about Meritus Health. Once you put those placements on a plan, we can take that and that illustration, we can go to our other business network, whether it's in Annapolis, Baltimore, Washington, and with a plan, we can get other people to be interested in locating here. Without the plan, you can't talk about it and get anybody to understand the real possibilities.
Yeah, and I would just interject, that was a very consistent theme that we heard. Nobody is willing to take the first step alone. Overwhelmingly, people are not willing to take risk in downtown unless we have a comprehensive plan and there is a commitment by the city, by the county, and by the state, and ultimately then with local business tying in.
And the state, future funding with the state, which we explored this year, got to have a plan.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the other consistent theme we
Yep.
heard. Keeping in mind that to some extent, the state has the gold, so they make the rules. The state told us overwhelmingly, repeatedly, we have to have a plan. We can't just come back with the idea of, well, give us money and we'll figure this out as we go. That will not suffice.
So the way that we've tried to present this, and Melissa might want to add in, you have to be able to tackle this from both ends. You have to do something that is an organized plan with the city, which is in the proposal DMW would cut itself off from the team and just work with the city, while Sora and Bruce would work with the 4 people who have indicated that they want to do a development project. They would take their plans further within their own organizations to a deeper, let's say a more directed point, where they knew how they could fund it, how they could implement it, and then feed us that information to get it into the master planning process. That way, what we would be doing is more than an illustration, more than an infrastructure assessment, more than studies and feasibilities. We would actually be incorporating in your plan portions of their plans to do things on their properties. In particular, Joe Ross suggested that they want to participate in their planning process, but they also want to continue to advance the things that they've already initiated. But they need to run parallel and be intermeshed. They can't be separated. They have to be. So towards that end, most of the people who wrote letters also offered to be part of the steering committee. So the leadership from each of those groups, and I think we mentioned it somewhere in the report, like Joe Ross would be on the advisory committee, or Don would be on the advisory committee, or somebody from Maryland Theater, or somebody from Washington County Economic Development. Ron Bowers offered to be on the steering committee. So that would be important too. That is one of the ways that you can integrate these separate initiatives and then combine them with the downtown master planning, and yet have the committee be somebody that is both represented by the city and the state and the county, but also the businesses would be on the steering committee as well. I think we recommended up to
12 to 15.
12 to 15. Once you get over that, it's an unmanageable situation. So what would happen, you would give regular presentations to them on the progress. So the progress prints from everything we're doing in the studies would go before the steering committee, and we would talk about next steps. And then they would tell us what they thought and give us direction on next steps, and we would change some of the things that we thought needed to be done next, and maybe adjust the priorities, and then go back to the entities that had indicated that they were willing to be in the first stage of the development. Once you get a first stage plan and you get 3 or 4 participants and you mix private funding with some state and local funding, and people can see 1 or 2 buildings, the next thing you need to do is you need to have the plan publicized in different areas where people visit all the time, so that they can see where they are and see the project that has gone up, but also see the vision for the next step and the next step and the next step. What have we left out?
Nothing. I mean, I think the overall theme of the whole report is that DMW would act on behalf of the city, and we would kind of be a facilitator between Bruce and Sora and the other people in the community. And, you know, we would help move the advisory committee along on a weekly basis and then go from there, just to continue the progress and the momentum. And I think at the end of the day, everybody wants a cohesive plan that takes into account the best thing for the city. But it is cohesive and, you know, there is a start and a finish, and everybody works together to get to the end product, to have a successful project.
And I would just say to you, I strongly endorse this idea of getting DMW to work with you in the next stage. In other words, I'm not coming in and asking for any kind of contract for myself or for Sora. I think it's essential, however, that you get DMW to come in, work with city staff, and get into this planning process, and then start to identify in stages what can be achieved, what makes the most sense. And the other piece of this that I would emphasize is time is of the essence. As ridiculous as it sounds, the legislative session just ended, by the way. Hello, John, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
John came up from Towson, and we appreciate it because I think he can also brief you on the particulars of some of these funding issues out of the state in terms of the MELP funding and infrastructure funding and such. But even though the session has just ended, literally, as former Senator Munson knows, things are just starting to crank up again going into next session. And we cannot find ourselves in a position where in November or December of this year, we're trying to figure out what it is we want, where we want it, and how it's going to be funded. That will be death. The other problem with this is we're now coming to the 4th year of this term. So when this next next legislative session is over, inevitably there will be turnover. That means we're going to have new relationships built with members of the House and the Senate. There will certainly be a new governor and a lieutenant governor who we don't know, new administration officials. It becomes very, very difficult then to start this process again. So that's why I would say working with DMW as your next step and moving quickly under a tight time frame is a very sensible
Yeah, I would
step.
say to Bruce that the proposal is written builds on something that Bruce said at probably our last presentation, which was there's got to be some part of this big effort that has to happen to do the master planning that the city staff can participate in. So the way we've written the proposal that you all will be discussing amongst yourselves afterwards is that we would come on board with you for a 2-month period, and there's certain activities that we have to jumpstart, and they've been identified. But there's other things that we submitted to you back in February that have to be done to bring this plan together right. Traffic assessments, there's got to be performance done. There's got to be ways to do that, and property assessments and what properties are available and what's their value. There's people on the city staff that can very well work with us. So what we'd be talking about after the first 2 months is developing a team of DMW employees and experts in planning and engineering working with the city staff and consolidating that larger plan into a much more cost-effective plan and becoming partners together in doing it. And we would bring the Sora and Bruce in with us as one of the entities that we're going to be meeting with on a weekly basis and bringing all the updated information from all these other people that want to do something downtown. So I don't know that there's anything else that we can say.
Except, truly, John was down there 24/7 during the session, and he ended up, I think, with a lot of successes. John, we explained that the infrastructure funding is something that is not pinned down with exact specifics, but as a result of your votes for the Transportation Trust Fund, that there's going to be funding available, which certainly I think is helpful not only to the city, but really in partnership for the county, because you want to bring the county to the table. You need a partnership here. And I think in talking to the commissioners, they certainly recognize that too. But maybe you could speak to that and also the situation with the MELP funding.
Sure.
Welcome to the table, Mr. Delegate.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Good to be back here in my old stomping grounds. I got my original start right here.
Just
Thank you, Bruce, for that pre-op. In terms of the melt plant, let me back up first. Senator Munson helped me, along with the mayor, acquire the funding for Antietam Fire Station, and I want to thank you both for that. We were successful, finally. The melt plant, there were questions of the Capital Budget Subcommittee in terms of the body of water on which the plant sits. Is it a tributary to the Chesapeake Bay? Are there any environmental issues? They suggested to me that we approach the Maryland Environmental Services, which is a state agency run by a former delegate, to see if they would come up here and partner with the city. They partner with municipalities all over the state for issues just like this. The other piece is the Chesapeake Bay Trust. Because it is a tributary to the bay, they felt that the Chesapeake Bay Trust could come up here and also partner with us. So we think we could be successful getting that $300,000 out of both of those groups while they work with the city, demolishing, cleaning up, taking care of the water, and so forth. So that's where we are on that. In terms of the bridge over the Antietam for the new hospital, that is on the governor's radar screen. It's on the lieutenant governor's radar screen. There are discussions going on as we speak within the transportation department. The lieutenant governor will be coming up here to do site visits at the bridge, the melt plant, and the old hospital site. And that should happen very soon. And I will certainly let everybody know when that is going to happen. And then in terms of the $100,000 for the planning, I think we were very successful with that as well. So everything is in good shape, and I'm very confident that we can work together and get the bridge over the Antietam and get the melt plant taken care of. Thank you.
Appreciate your efforts. At this point, I know that there are council members who have questions or comments, and we want to start digging in. I think Mr. Munson is chomping at the bit here to say something, so please go ahead.
Well, first, I want to commend Melissa for this. I'm sure this took an abundance of time. It's well written, and as far as I can tell, every word was spelled correctly. John, thank you for being here, and I'd like to commend you on your efforts in the General Assembly this year. I know from experience how difficult getting money is, especially in a down economy. And you were
I
quite.
appreciate all your work on the Senate side.
You were
Despite
quite
the fact that you're not a member of the Senate anymore, you still have a lot of friends.
Well, thank you. You were quite successful. Dean, I just want to. Dane, I want to get into a couple issues here. If you could respond to these, I would really appreciate it. First, the issue that I think unifies us as a council is, to the best of my recollection, not mentioned in here. And it's an issue you and I have talked about privately and publicly involving the University of Maryland. Did you ever have any conversations with those folks, and how do they fit in with what you see, or what you?
Well, I can speak to part of it. Bruce can probably talk to the other part of it. University of Maryland medical system we've talked to. It may not be the University of Maryland that you're talking about, but this is worth everybody hearing too. They're working with Joe Ross and Meritus Health relative to the emergency services at the hospital to see if they can't work out some sort of a, what would you call it, an affiliate relationship or a partnering relationship where your emergency facilities would actually be in part managed by shock trauma, which would be a big thing here and a step towards a lot of other many opportunities which Bruce can probably elaborate on. But then as far as the University of Maryland, maybe Bruce can add on to what I have just offered.
I was able to talk to some people very high up at the University of Maryland. They, I believe, would not want to be spotted currently. What they've stated is that under the current financial situation, they can't ask for an expansion of the facility currently, but long-term, they see a tremendous potential in our downtown campus because of the price point. It's a very attractive place relative to people who want to find an affordable four-year education and still stay in Hagerstown, still stay in Maryland. They've raised interest in student housing as well. And so, again, I don't think that's something that we can say, yes, we can deliver, or we can make that happen in the short term. But I think particularly if we were to see a comprehensive plan adopted and get us moving forward with these other things, get other projects cited and underway, get, frankly, the streets cleaned up and a more secure feeling made, then I think we could expect a pretty good response from University of Maryland.
Thank you. I have just one more question, and then I'll let the other council members ask their questions. It seems to me that the hospital and the city are in a great position to do business. I know they want to get rid of Hospital Hill, and we need a place for a stadium. And now, but that brings on some potential problems that I can envision, and I'd like to hear your response. Cooperation's got to be a two-way street with the hospital. Indeed, if we seriously look at Hospital Hill for a new stadium, and it seems to me that it's kind of incumbent upon them to bring some serious facilities to downtown Hagerstown and help downtown grow. Now, I've heard some rumors that the facilities that we're interested in, and I don't know if these rumors are substantial or not, but and I need to hear your comments. The facilities that we're interested in downtown, indeed, they're interested in out where their present facilities are, near the hospital. And I just need to understand, if possible, if we play ball with them, will they play ball with us? And everybody can end out, at the end of the game, everybody can turn out to be a happy camper, I think.
I think what you need, Don, is to have a more point-to-point discussion with Joe Ross, but I will note two things. First, he's been here downtown in City Hall far more than his predecessor, and has had a much stronger interest in seeing downtown redeveloped. He has, it would have been easy for him to say, hey, I'm at the new site. I had nothing to do with leaving the old site, and so good luck to all of you. He hasn't been that way at all. He's expressed to individual council members and to the mayor his interest in seeing a redevelopment project, and he said that he would very much like to see Meritus have some type of project downtown. There are a lot of different possibilities. Possibilities in terms of actual health care, but also employee training and retraining that could take place down here. I think all those things are into the mix. Again, I mean, it sounds redundant, but the first thing we've got to do is come up with a vision and a plan generally as to what we want the downtown to be, and then start to go in and meet with these individual stakeholders as to what's really possible.
Well, he called me Friday night because he knew we'd be here.
Right.
And one, he wanted to make sure that his offer to work with the steering committee was presented, and I told him we put it in the report. The other thing is he did send a letter, but the other thing, he's been actively looking at opportunities to bring a clinic and a wellness center downtown. That's stated in the report. He's going to do that regardless of whether you take the other site or not. It's not a bargaining thing. He had decided to work with us and to participate and to bring Meritus down here. Well, we brought him to several meetings with us. He had decided even before the stadium idea came up, that he was going to try to put a facility downtown. And I hope we made that clear in the report. I think we did mention that he's actively looking at a wellness clinic down.
Thank you. That's music to my ears.
Yeah. I will say this, we worked with him down in Easton, and he is a community leader. He's the type that, he's very active, he participates in everything that local government wants. He's always been an active member in the business community itself, and he's one of these guys that makes a difference.
Oh, yeah.
He would have been great when we worked in the Schaefer administration, because he's a guy who could just, this is what we need to get done, and he's the guy that's going to go do it. That's why we're glad to have him associated with our team.
I've been very impressed, and I get back to it. I just have to believe a guy that's that busy, who has that many assignments at his own campus, wouldn't be participating in these meetings, wouldn't be volunteering to serve on an advisory committee if he wasn't looking towards a stronger commitment downtown.
Please.
If I can add just one thing, Dane mentioned a clinic and the need for one downtown, and I think Joe Ross recognizes that. If any of you have had experiences going to urgent care, you'll recall that there's one at Meredith, one on Pennsylvania Avenue. There was one in the hospital, and when the hospital relocated, that's gone. So I think the need, not everybody goes to the Walnut Street Clinic. There are people who have health insurance that are able to pay and need something a little closer in than going to Meredith or Pennsylvania Avenue. So I think we could help a huge population if the hospital brought in urgent care downtown.
Any other council members have comments, questions?
Well, I thank you all for your efforts and all you've done trying to move the city forward. I guess I am still trying to understand the items that are being brought to the table that will move downtown forward. It's not as though this administration, prior administration, every administration going back 20 or 25 years hasn't been trying to do things downtown. John, you were there. That was 20-some years ago, John.
Right, and
Yep.
we started talking
Right.
about getting the melt plant back
And-
down then.
Well, okay. But my point is that it's not like we're starting fresh. The city right now is involved in taking enormous risks, actually buying up properties, not quite knowing how we're going to do it for the sake that there's nothing else to do at the moment. So that there are a whole lot of things going on. The Planning Commission has changed the zoning codes. There's been a whole lot of activity. It's not as though everybody was doing nothing and then all of a sudden we're realizing there's a downtown. Now, I was involved in urban planning for the first 15 years of my career, from everything from the smallest villages to the very largest cities in this country. And I saw all kinds of approaches. And I'm just trying to, I think what we need are imaginative investors of a large enough scale that will encourage other investors. We need people that are willing to come in and do something on a scale that will bring other people after them. Somebody with reputation. They may or may not be from this area. I'm not quite sure what the term planning means, and I'm probably more familiar with planning than most people would be, including most municipal officials, and I'm still trying to struggle within the context of where we are right now. There are what plan means. We need ways to reach investors, and if plan means some kind of concerted outreach approach or PR approach, maybe that's what we need. If it's saying that our land use is wrong, I don't think the focus here needs to be land use. Okay. Well, I'm just trying to reach out here and find out, these are my questions in reading the material. We don't have an investor posed to do things down here. In some of the other areas that Sora worked in, you had educational institutions and or marketing spin-offs from those educational institutions that already had a lot of potential. We don't have that situation.
No, but you know what you do have? This is the point that maybe we didn't make. We have ideas and concepts, and people downtown and you have ideas and concepts. We have investor groups that think that they might want to invest in downtown,
Well, that's what I'm,
including Sora. But without all the details about these projects and how they might fit on the ground and how they work with the existing infrastructure and what are the funding needs and what is the architectural guideline going to be and what are the common elements that they're going to share and pay for together. These people who have money to invest here don't want to invest.
well,
It's too fragmented.
and I've been saying for a long time, I sat in Bruce's office a couple of years ago and said, we need a big investor coming in. We need big folks coming in.
I mean, respectfully, that isn't going to happen, and that's not even just particular to Hagerstown. You look at Baltimore. Baltimore did not turn around because some investor woke up someday and said, I'm going to go buy all of that
I
old...
didn't say all.
Well, large part of down through the harbor. I mean, you think about that, that didn't happen at all. What happened was the government got in first and said, okay, let's put a stake in the ground. Let's figure out the area that we're going to develop first. And let's start to get some government funding in so that we can secure it. Let's figure out where the parking is going to be. Let's figure out what the police protection involvement is going to be. Let's see if we can maximize. Absolutely.
Around Pearl Harbor, there was no water and sewer.
Yeah. If I look at Hagerstown right now, I can tell you what people tell me. They all say, I am not going downtown. I won't put money in downtown. And it's because there is not anything that gives me security to feel. Hang on. If you want to know, Marty, I'm just trying to tell you what the response is outside of these hallways. It's not to be critical. It's just the truth. People don't have confidence that tomorrow and next week and next year will be better. They feel that it's going to get worse and that it in fact is getting worse. My gosh, we look at today's paper and there's a story on the front page about the Crips and the Bloods. This goes on and on. Until there's a feeling that the government has gotten a hold of the problem, is linking up with the county, is linking up with the state, is going to get infusions of dollars that the city can't get by itself, is going to reach out and work to bring the hospital in, to bring the Board of Education in other ways in, to do these other things, it's not going to work. And if I'm, for instance, the day, I forget, there was a day where there was bad news on the front page of the paper, and you could say, well, that's very often. But I happened to be walking down the street, I ran into a lady from my church who's investing in a restaurant downtown. And she said, I hope you guys succeed because my husband and I are putting our money into downtown. It's a personal thing. And I left there and I felt like, wow, I have got a burden on me because it's not just a matter of succeeding for my purpose or the city's. It's all the people who are counting on something to be done. And it's not, I'm telling you, it doesn't have anything to do with zoning classification. It doesn't have anything to do with, minute changes. It's a really a sizable, noticeable change, something of great magnitude that says it will be different. And without that, you will fail.
Well, Bruce, you didn't let me finish my thought, though.
Okay.
But my thought wasn't only that private, but without that, a clinic will not bring somebody downtown. That will bring kind of people downtown that everybody complains about, quite frankly. We had a clinic on Antietam Street, by the way, not the hospital, and the hospital closed it. Right. So we had a clinic and it was closed. So let's be frank about that. and that served the citizens of Hagerstown in a central location. It was closed for the sake of outlying ones. No, where I'm going is it's a combination of both, but focusing just on that kind of government project, and we tried to focus on the Board of Ed, and we're, you know, that shows the hurdles we have to overcome. That, you know, as you said, they were interested, they were already focused on another place. There's a large thing to overcome. I guess my thing is a plan, a static paper plan, whatever that is, I'm not clear what it is, and I'm trying to understand. I read all the documents, but, you know, and I appreciate the efforts, and I'm not saying I'm against them. I just think that we need to find a way to encourage that private investment. And when you say that's not feasible, that worries me. There is a lot of private investment downtown. Yes, they had governmental investment, but there was also commensurate in Baltimore, commensurate private investment in Baltimore.
The private investment came, it could
Right.
come in a partnership.
Right.
That's been offered.
Well, Bruce, you're talking to a person that supported the downtown. There's only two of
Yeah.
us that supported the stadium downtown, which we thought was a good effort.
Yeah.
Nest. They're here. You're talking to one of them. So
Okay.
I believe in investing in downtown. I'm just saying, you know, we need to have a clear strategy. I think a strategy is a better word for this than plan. To find people, to find investors. I come from outside, most of my career was outside this community. I think this community has a lot to offer. In fact, I think this community has more to offer than most people I talk to in this community. We have all kinds of things, and I think we can sell that to outsiders. But I'm not sure that a plan is exactly the way to get there. I have to understand the way we're going to reach out to the investors, the investing community. I think that's the key to getting downtown, is getting contact with investors, letting them know that we have an urban community on the edge of the metropolitan area that has all kinds of advantages, that doesn't have traffic congestion, and it has all kinds of amenities. It has a city feel without the city disadvantages, and on and on and on.
That's not good enough.
Let me
And-
tell you
Well,
what you're missing.
and I'm not arguing against doing this. I'm just trying to say, well, you're saying that's not good enough. Bruce is saying private investment isn't
Let me tell you
here.
what the people with the money want.
And I supported the stadium. I supported government investment. So I'm not arguing against it. I just need to feel what the,
But let me explain what they're telling us. You can't come in, for example, Maryland Theater. If you can't support Maryland Theater, you can't support anything. Okay? Everything about it, everybody loves. Okay? They can't get anybody to fund it. Why can't they get anybody to fund it? Think about it. I mean, it's probably one of the nicest facilities I've seen, theater facilities anywhere in this country, and I've traveled a little bit. It's right here, it's a gem, okay? And you've got Barbara Ingram School that says they'll participate with them in the bigger project. You got this restaurant owner who will participate. They don't have the funding that they need to do it. Well, they don't have the plan to do it either. They have an idea. And the idea is supported by the community at large and all the investors that they have dealt with over the years. But they don't understand how that translates into an art center downtown. What are the facilities that are going to help them support it? Is there going to be public funding? Who are going to be the outside private investors? What are they bringing to the table? What are they going to get at? Oh, you can't just talk to them about something in generalities. People who are going to put hard cash up want to say, this is a sidewalk, this is what it's going to cost. It's going to be a 3-story building, and we're going to have a condominium ownership in it. Barbara Ingram's going to own one store, one level. The theater's going to own another, and the restaurant owner's going to own another. Here's how we're going to finance it. Here's how we're going to pay down the debt. Here's how we're going to participate in that. The numbers don't work. We need some other component to be part of this thing, okay? What is the other component? These are the things that the investors want to know. Are you going to have, they've read about the stadium downtown. If it's not a stadium, what's it going to be? Well, is it going to be 3 blocks away from the Barbara Ingram School and the Maryland Theater? Isn't. Is there sewer capacity? Oh, there's sewer capacity. How old are the pipes in the ground? It's just like any other banking or lending institution. They want to know every detail about how this idea that people have is going to work in the ground. And I told you the first time I was here, what Senator Kate told me when I went to get money for the Schaefer administration to upgrade 17 sewage plants in the state. You can tell me anything you want, Dane, it doesn't mean anything. I don't know if your numbers are right. I don't know if you build that. I don't know if it's going to meet the standards that you say. You got to get a plan, and you got to do the feasibility, you got to do the cost-effective analysis, and you got to get me the meat on the bones. Then I'll give you the money. I will give you whatever money you need if you can give me the detail on how this thing's going to work. I think I said that at the first meeting. That's the plan we're talking about. This is a plan to implement, a plan that shows how you can build it, how you can finance it. Some plan that I can take to a bank or a private investor group and say, will you help these people fund this thing? They will not fund your general ideas. They won't. They won't fund Maryland Theater's general ideas. They can't find anybody to invest in it. That's what we're talking about.
Well, things like that have to be private benefactors. There aren't going to be people making private investments based on rate of investment or rate of return. But
Let me recognize Mr. Alshire and keep this conversation, get some other council members in the mix here. You raised your hand, Kristen.
Yeah,
So.
I know, but Lou was.
Lou just gave me the look. I didn't know if that was the look of seeking recognition or, oh, okay.
I'm not sure how much I'm going to comment. I read what you provided, and for me, it goes back to the letter of commitment as our representatives that you made to the city on March 8th. In that letter, you identified 8 specific areas in which you would endeavor over a 45-day period, a letter in which I signed on behalf of the citizens I represent, a letter in which you indicated to me that you would do some of the following, one of which included would be weekly written reports to us to be able to provide back to the public some type of update to share with them, because to me, and I told you this from the very get-go, the public's business is exactly that. It's public and should be. Here is now 45 days gone, and I have received 2 pieces of correspondence. The first of which was an email on April 3rd, which chastised the city and its staff for being unappreciative in its comments. The second of which was an email dated April 15th, stating that you could not meet with city staff to give them an update at 40 days now gone by in your efforts with these 8 endeavors, 2 of the 8 of which you have been successful on, by my count. But you have a letter dated April 18th, which is this report that you provided to the mayor yesterday, in order for this body to be able to consume and digest and comment on a day later today. That's a little difficult for me to accept in terms of being able to accept that there's going to be some positive and trusted cooperative partnership. You certainly understand that you as an entity would work as our vendor. And the process that I have witnessed during that period does not give me great confidence. I would hearken to 2 points within this report. The first of which is this $100,000 from the state for a downtown master planning effort, in which it appears in this letter suggests that we should move forward later this evening and agree with you as partners, if you will, to provide an agreement with to begin the expense of those funds. And as I said from the very get-go on March 8th, when we met, we cannot do that. This needs to go through a public bid process. That is the public process in which we must endure, which is why in the March 8th letter you attached an addendum in writing that you would make yourselves eligible, or the letter would preclude you from being eligible in the event that that process should need to occur. The second point is under this building consensus, LOI, letter of intent, I'm assuming, where it talks about a basis from which these projects are going to proceed. Some of them talking about an aquatic center and a stadium on the hospital site, none of which this body has had any public discussion on to date. And so I'm not certain how you springboard from getting the documentation one day, responding to it the next, and already having these various projects lined up with an unknown variable that reflects cost for an agreement we have yet to come to agreement on. It simply says it will reflect portions of the one that was provided back in February, which, if I recall correctly, at the joint county EDC meeting, it was indicated by the folks present that $786,000 agreement really meant nothing, that it was just an idea. So I don't know how I am to determine what portion of funds we have yet to receive would be rolled into that process. So that's my perspective.
My perspective, Councilman, is that frankly, I really don't want to spend a whole lot of time. I think it's going to further deteriorate a relationship between the two of us on this matter. I've had 12 months of working for the city now for no fee, no compensation. I've worked my tail off. These other folks have worked their tails off as well. I frankly focused on results. I think we're delivering results today. I would ask the city to reflect upon the fact that there's been tremendous contemplation as to what the future of this city should be for years. And all around us, things are falling down. I think at some point the voters want results, and I've tried to be responsive to that.
Mr. Metzner.
Try to comment. I watched us as a community over the last 2 decades anyways, have downtown as a focus. And appropriately so. It's been said by many people of the reasons why you cannot allow the city core and the center of the county seat to deteriorate. And as much as we've gotten criticism over the years about our downtown, we have in fact been very effective in improving our downtown. I have relatives in from California right now who just can't believe what a beautiful city we have. And we reached a point, it's interesting, last week we talked about APFOs. Many of us forget, and many of us don't forget, that we needed an APFO because growth was overcoming us. At that stage of the game, our downtown not only was prosperous, but we were on the absolute verge of high-end condominium residential housing. Projects were already started. And it was a housing bubble, and it burst, and the economy burst. What we have seen is the deterioration of many downtowns, and ours certainly is one of them. We have lost a number of retail establishments, some for good reasons. You look at the prom, the gown, bridal place, who were so successful they moved out. Some for good reasons of retirement, of successful businesses that God bless we miss, like Huffman's, who were here forever but left for retirement. Bickles, who's leaving for retirement. And the problems are, in today's economy, and with what's happened, we've now have difficulty in achieving the goals we would like to see for downtown. And notwithstanding how much downtown has improved over the last 2 decades, that improvement has started to go backwards in the recent past. The last administration came to the table with a project that invigorated this entire community. I have not seen in the years I've lived in Hagerstown so much excitement among a community, and especially the business community. It's especially the business community about the downtown stadium and what it was going to do for downtown. There's no question when I say that I've never seen so much excitement from the business community. At the same respect, clearly, there was a lot of non-excitement from the residential community and the voters, which was not only reflected in the election, but was reflected in who ran for election and the platforms they stood for. There was a huge disappointment, not at the election results, not at necessarily not having a stadium downtown, but at this momentum that had gone forward, this momentum of people really seeing something downtown. Businesses actually coming in. I mean, we have a business that actually came to Hagerstown from New York, and one of the reasons was the hope of downtown revitalization. We all got elected in November in this new theory of elections to walk into Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and a budget, and no stadium project. And while people don't want a stadium, they want something. They want us to do something. They see momentum. And they see what this city did for the last 8 to 10 months. And I've said it to Bruce and the staff before, and I'll say it again. I never want anybody to think when I mention what happened, thus that staff had anything to do but work their rear ends off, hours upon hours upon hours. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The newspaper did the editorial about we're the greatest planning community in the world. We do great plans. And the big rendition of the stadium is upstairs with that editorial sitting on it. So now I see us sitting at a crossroads, the community looking at this body and saying, what are you going to do? Are you going to do the same old stuff again, or are you going to think outside the box? Is the proposal that's being made different? Yeah. Are some of us having some difficulty in getting a handle on exactly how is all this going to work? Yeah. And they should, because we've never done it any more than we've ever built a new stadium. In the meantime, I look in the audience and I try to think, you know, to my knowledge, we as a city council did not send out invites. And I look, I see developers, I see county commissioners, I see Greater Hagerstown, I see landowners, I see the Chamber of Commerce. And they're all here for one reason. They want to know if we're going to do business as usual. And then say, that's okay. Thank you, guys. We really don't have a real good feel for what you want to offer us. And we appreciate your thoughts in the last 10 months you've been here. But we'll do it our way. We don't need your help. We'll go back to the drawing board. You know, when we hired the federal lobbyist, over a whole lot of arguments and criticism, we got more bang out of our bucks from that federal lobbyist than we probably ever did from any investment we ever made. We don't have them now because, unfortunately, we got in the last couple of years where there was still an ability to get federal monies with earmarks or things of that nature. So now we have people coming to the table who I look at as very similar to the lobbyist. I see, for good or for bad, and for whatever reasons anybody can attribute any way they want, but I see a lack of faith outside of this building in city government being able to do what we are endeavoring to do. I do not believe I see the same lack of faith from the private investors in this group. So I think we move forward with this group. I understand that there are RFPs and there aren't RFPs. We've had those discussions and we'll have them again, and we're going to decide. I don't know that any other group has made a proposal to come in and do something like this, nor do I suspect. And I suspect when I've seen the amount of money that these folks have indicated they've invested so far, I believe it. And I would think if we're going to put in that RFP that I would expect another group to invest that some kind of money and time up front. And I don't think it's going to happen. So I, for one, am a believer. Yeah, I hear aquatic centers say, wow, never thought of that one. And I see a Board of Education who has a lot of high schools that may very well have that use. I see these things coming together, and I think it's being done in a proper manner, and I, for one, firmly support this effort. I think it is our ability to have something done in our downtown in a very proper and appropriate manner. The players we are dealing with, the Maryland Theater, the Barbara Ingram School, the hospital, this is one of the very few times in the city's history when, as I said to the council member next to me, you know, and I look at Greater Hagerstown, and I look at the chamber, and I look at the county, and let there be no misunderstanding here. I've been in enough administrations to tell you about the bad times we've had with those organizations, whether it's been through litigation, whether it's been through you're not running our government, we are, whether it's been trying to buy elections, and I'm not saying anybody did, I'm trying to say the problems in the discourse that's taking place. And for the first time since I've been in city government, instead of these groups disagreeing with each other and trying to find a way to, you know, we want the hospital here and the hospital wants there, suddenly things are falling into place. Suddenly it appears that what the city thinks is a good idea, the hospital thinks is a good idea. Suddenly it certainly appears that what the city thinks is a good idea, the chamber thinks is a good idea. I truly believe the same can be said of the Board of Education. That's a whole nother discussion about them moving where they moved to, but it was not because they disagreed with our theories. I believe, candidly, had we started this process with them 2 years ago, they may be downtown with various other things. I don't know. But that happened and it happened. So I just would like, hopefully, to end this on a rather positive note. And I, for one, would like our community to think we are going to do something. And we are thinking outside the box. And we will take some risk and we will take some chances. And candidly, I'd like to spend a little bit more money supporting things when I think about the amount of money we as a city spent in fighting things like the hospital. We took that money and spent it to partner with folks. I think we would get a whole lot more done.
Thanks, Mr. Metzger. Ms. Nod, we haven't heard from you. Would you like to
Probably
make
won't
any
hear from
comments?
me.
Any comments or questions?
All I can say is I want to see the plan. I want to see those investors. And I know we've got to chomp off that first hunk, but I want to make sure that they're there. I feel that it can go forward, as much opposition as what I am getting, and you'll never do anything downtown, it'll never happen. It's not about what the old downtown was, it's about what now has got to be new and improved. And this is what we have to search for. So hopefully you'll come up with that private entity that we need.
And let me just say, I too want to thank you all for the work that you put in. I know that you haven't received any compensation from the city up until this point, and you've been at it for almost a year or more now, putting in this effort. And what strikes me in being out in the community and hearing from people is that when you say the word Sora now, out in the community, and people may or may not even know who that is or what that is, but you say that word, and because of the discussions that we've had to date, people start to get stars in their eyes. And it's become a code word, I believe, for change and progress and doing something new and exciting. And I think that is undeniable at this point, that what you guys have brought to the table has created a lot of that sense of excitement. And I want to thank you for that and the work that you've done establishing the partnerships and relationships. I agree with Mr. Metzner that I think a lot of people in the community, businesses, some entities would rather work with a private partner in collaboration with the city than the city alone. That perhaps for whatever reason, either their experience in the past or whatever reason, they think the city can't get it done on its own. I do think when it comes to the hospital, this is a new administration. There's a new administration at the hospital. Whatever happened in the past is in the past. I don't think we need to relitigate those old battles, and I don't anticipate that that would be what we're looking to do. A lot of what we're talking about goes back to what Mr. Poole said. What do we want? Where do we want it? And how much is it going to cost? I think certainly, I believe there is a majority on this council who's willing to spend money and in some kind of effort to plan. And certainly, I believe if we're going to get to where we want Hagerstown to be, we have to make significant investments in our community. And if you ask me, or if people ask me, does a stadium really cost $30 million? It may or may not. I don't have the details on that at this point. That's certainly what is being anticipated. But if you ask me, are we worth it? Then my answer is clearly yes. That I do believe that we need to make these kinds of smart and significant investments in our community in order to move Hagerstown forward. And that's just not a catchphrase. It's something we want to get done. And certainly it's not going to just be in a plan. And at some point, plans have to be implemented and put into action. And I think that's what everybody wants to see happen is we want to get something done. I believe that a stadium could be a catalyst project. I believe that the Cultural Arts Center that's been discussed is huge. And I agree. One of the biggest problems is how do we get something like that paid for? And I think what I'm looking for personally as the mayor is what level of commitment are you looking, or is the Maryland Theater looking for, is the Board of Education and BISFA looking for from the city? Because I think we are ready and willing to be a partner in a project like that. We just need to know how much it's going to cost. And so, of course, all of those things will be figured out throughout this process. But I do not believe we're prepared to give you an answer tonight, I think as you hoped, to move forward with the proposal you put on the table. I do want to share that we plan to have an executive session next week, next Tuesday, prior to our budget work session, so that we can consult with our legal team to consider the contract that you proposed. I will say also that the staff is preparing an RFP. They have a draft already in play. My goal is to have decisions made not only about whether or not to move forward with this significant public-private partnership, but a decision about where we build a stadium, how much that costs. All of these are also implicated in our budget. And the budget we anticipate will be finalized by May 21st. So certainly we will have, if not by then certainly before then, decisions on some of these major issues. I think it would be too much to ask for this body to make that decision today, because I do think we need to have some of these deliberative discussions for something as major as this. But I really do want to thank you again for bringing this to the table, because I think it has brought, like some have said, significant amount of attention, excitement, enthusiasm, and potentially even investment already being made in the city of Hagerstown because of the work of your team.
One, we did keep in touch with the city the whole time that we were working on this with the mayor. I probably talked to him every week or emailed him every week. Two, 80% of the work that our firm does with county government is not RFP. I know the state procurement laws as well as anybody. If you worked in the Schaefer administration, or if you worked with a senator like I did, you know exactly how you can do procurements. And there's an opportunity to do a procurement like this any day of the week. We've certainly put our equity investment in it. Together, we've spent $250,000 up here this year. We've put our part of it in. That's a lot of money. You know, the city can easily argue that they need to match it. You know, that's your argument. That's your legal basis for doing something like this. We've put our equity into this. We do sole source procurements with Anne Arundel, Charles County, and some of the biggest counties in the state because we have special services that you cannot buy in the open market. You cannot buy Bruce Poole in the open market. His contacts, my network. This is different. This isn't planning like somebody might have thought. This is planning, bringing people with money together on a piece of paper with commitments. This is different. You can't put an RFP out to find people that have the networks like we have. We want to work here. Who would be here day in, day out like we are if we didn't want to be your partners? I've known Bruce for 25 years. I'm looking for the opportunity to team with him on something, to do things like we did 15, 20 years ago. That's what we used to do. Governments and private sector used to team together, find out what the issue was. We rolled up our sleeves and we avoided the legal issues that you were talking about, and we just did it. We just did it. We knew that we all agreed that we wanted to get to some place. We didn't know how to get it, so we did it together. Somebody just told us we had to build a new this, a new that, a new jail, a new prison, a new sewer. We figured it. We didn't have the money. We didn't have the plan. We didn't have anything. We had partners who agreed to work with each other. That's what we're offering. We're offering our 80 years of combined experience in Annapolis and state government with all the private contacts and business people that we have. We're offering it to the city at a bargain price, an absolutely bargain price. We said hire us for 2 months and take that time to negotiate a longer-term deal where you blend the city staff with our staff and you come up with your own budget and we live with it. I don't know anybody that could propose anything fairer than that. You take the old work plan that we came up with, it was $1 million, and I think Bruce said it 2 meetings ago, the city staff can do some of those things. We never sat down yet to see how that can be merged, how we can take our business and our planning capabilities and be able to network that with the city's infrastructure knowledge and knowledge of technical details about the city and the properties and what can be done on those things. That's all. We're asking for an opportunity after a year. We've never pressed you for money, for anything. This has been a public service thing. We're basically here because of Bruce. Bruce had an idea that we could make a difference, so we're here. So I'll leave it to your judgment. We're here. We've been here.
And I appreciate your work. Would anyone, other council members have any other comments or questions? Mr. Munson.
We appreciate what you've done, too. We appreciate the confidence you have in this community. Be better than we are. A lot of people out there want us to be better than we are, and we have that responsibility to make that happen. There have been a lot of attempts over the years to do that, and they haven't been as successful as a lot of people would like them to be. But let me just mention one thing in connection with your letter. It seems to me that if we're missing anything at all, we might be missing what our goal really is. I mean, we all want Hagerstown to be a better place. But what does that really mean? I have an idea what it means to me. What it means to me is in 3 years, 5 years, there will be 10,000 extra people downtown every day. But maybe that's not the real goal. And maybe that the reconstruction, rebuilding, reformation of the Maryland Theater helps that happen, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe, and hopefully the expansion of the University of Maryland, if and when it comes about, makes that happen. So I think that one of the things that we need to do as we move forward is make it quite clear on your side and make it quite clear on our side what is our goal, and do the things that we need to do to measure what we are doing to meet that goal. And I believe that it's now or never. The enthusiasm is here. The people who can make this happen are here. And it's got to be now or never. Lou was right. John was right. When things change in the General Assembly, it may present huge problems for us. I know that personally. I was there for a long time. And consequence, we do need to get started ASAP. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for having faith
Let me say just one
in the
thing.
community.
Delegate.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to add one thing. I know there's some concern about where are the investors? And I think we all know that investment can take many forms. Don and Bruce and I were in Annapolis working together when the whole Carroll Creek project was going on
Right.
in Frederick. If you recall, the investors ponied up, not just by writing a check to the city, they bought tax-free municipal bonds because they knew they could get a rate that was decent, pay no state taxes, pay no federal taxes, and get better rate of return than a CD at the bank. And that paid off. And once that whole Carroll Creek project got funded through the state and doing all those general obligation bonds, that whole downtown flourished. And then guess what happened? They wanted a new stadium, and they funded Harry Grove Stadium, where the Hagerstown Keys play today. And now I think we ought to take a good look at exactly how all of that played out, because I'm hearing the same discussion today that we heard in Annapolis years ago. And I just want us to make sure, as Governor Schaefer said, let's do it.
Now.
Do it
Now. Do it now.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys being here. We will get back to you very soon. And at this point, I want to take a recess before we start our next presentation.
Recess? What, are we in school?
Yeah.
I didn't hear any bells ring.